A very good afternoon, and thank you so much for having taken the time to have joined us in today's webinar. My name is Jay, and I'm an identity access management and IT security consultant here at ManageEngine. So before we get started, I would want to quickly thank you guys for having taken the time. And you early birds are going to help me out essentially to do a quick audio video check. I'm going to start off by saying 1, 2, 3, and if you can hear me say 1, 2, 3, all you got to do is make use of the chat window and say 1, 2, 3. You've got a chat window that's available, an option where you can write to me. If you can hear me say 1, 2, 3, this is a quick audio check. If you can hear me say 1, 2, 3, use the chat window to say, oh, lovely, thank you so much, oh, lovely, thank you so much, Robert, thank you so much, Nick, thank you, Jack, all of you, thank you so much, guys. Awesome. So we are set. The audio seems to be working perfectly fine. And next up, the video. Are you able to see my screen that says how to defend against an Office 365 account takeover, or ATO? If you can see my screen, just type in great. Oh, lovely. Thank you once again. Thanks, guys. We are all set and good to go. Once again, thank you so much for having taken the time to have joined our webinar today. We at ManageEngine, it's always a pleasure for us to have you guys over for these interesting webinars. So the idea behind the global webinar series that we are organizing all through the first half of the year has been around IT security and identity and access management. It is quite important that administrators come to terms with the fact that both IT security and identity access management are not two separate verticals of IT operations, but then they are intertwined so closely that it is important that you handle them with a single approach. I mean, when I'm talking about managing your Office 365, that essentially boils down to ensuring you get all your users onboarded, assign licenses to them, and all of that. And in addition to that, you wouldn't really want to stop right there. Given the fact that the identity and access management that gets done in Office 365 is quite new to most of us, it is important that we understand the whole dynamics of Office 365 and how it's managed. So when it comes to managing identities on-prem, it is quite it's a fact that most of us administrators don't have a problem at all. It's a cakewalk for us. We know every aspect of our Active Directory. We know all security policies. We know how to make the best of the system and always stay secure. And most importantly, when it comes to an on-prem system like Active Directory, you have absolute control over every aspect of it. That is essentially because all of the resources are inside your perimeter. You have control over it. But when it comes to an application like Office 365 or an IAM platform like Office 365, the number of touch points that are available are innumerable, and your users want mobility. So this is where all the problem begins. It essentially boils down to this challenge between the usability and security. So when you're trying to get them to use things easily on the go, make it simple for them, there's always this aspect of compromise of security. So that is essentially why many administrators out there are not really completely comfortable moving to Office 365. But then you just can't neglect the quantum of migration that's happening towards Office 365. In fact, I'd been to the conference hosted in Orlando last year. Microsoft had put together this huge event. They call it the Ignite event, and I was very much able to understand that the market is receptive to this new technology, but then it's also at the same time a little paranoid about the challenges when it comes to security. So today's session is essentially going to be around understanding what goes behind Office 365 and how exactly are administrators supposed to ensure that their security for Office 365 is as strong as it could get. So we'll be talking about one specific challenge that all of our administrators are facing in recent times, and it's been on a rise than ever before. It's the account takeover, or ATO as security specialists call it. So what essentially does an account takeover look like? An administrator at any given point in time would want complete control over the environment. But then at times when users become a little sloppy, there is this hacker or attacker waiting to gain access or entry into your environment. So an account gets taken over and there starts the problem. So this session is essentially going to be more like an introduction into what an account takeover is. How would you be able to essentially defend if there's an account takeover, and just in case if all of the damage is already done, how are you going to reconcile? That is essentially going to be the agenda of today's session. So without much delay, getting into the session, what do we see right here? We see a bunch of employees right here in an organization. They seem to be super happy. They seem to be having a really good day. So this is what I see when I look at this picture. But is that how an attacker sees this? Not really. For an attacker, it doesn't matter who the user is. All that matters for an attacker is the behavior of an user. The attacker essentially tries to profile every single user in the organization just to find out the weakest spot or the weakest link, right? Many a times we have users in the organizations who don't oblige to your best practices or security recommendations. That's a given, that's a known fact. But then what's all the more astounding is the fact that we still have users in our organizations who write their passwords on a piece of paper or a sticky note and have them stuck right on top of their desktop. Wow. How are administrators going to save themselves from this trouble? For an attacker, it's quite simple. All they'll have to do is wait, take control over an account. All this happens basically because they keep a close tab on every activity that a user does. In fact, there have been instances where users get tracked for months. An attacker would profile the user and would know things to such details or such detail as in the case of when a user is essentially going to take a break, when does the user get his or her coffee, things like that. So this is super scary, and attackers try to exploit when the user is at his most vulnerable state. So for an attacker, it's quite simple. Once they breach that first touch point, once they exploit that one single loose link or weak link in your organization, it's just about a matter of 2 days before they get access or control over the Active Directory or the Office 365 environment. So all it takes is just 2 days. And this infographic right here is an infographic that was posted by Microsoft in the conference that I'd been to. It's quite astounding. In fact, Microsoft agrees that this is a very new line of identity and access management tool set. So the challenges are also quite dynamic because attackers are equipped with innumerable number of tools and resources. They are very well trained. They take enough time to understand your user. In fact, they know your users better than you do. So that being the case, after this infiltration takes place, an attacker effectively conceals his or her identity and always stays below the radar. They do not do any action that would essentially trigger an alert. They ensure that they patiently wait. They figure out what data they essentially want. Do they want to cause a damage to the organization? Do they want to destroy some intellectual property, or do they want to extort or exfiltrate data out of the organization? So they take their own sweet time, and many times it is again this part that is quite striking. We've got organizations that take months to report that they were actually under an attack. They never really know. After all of that happened, after enough damage had done, then they finally realized something had gone wrong. So where is the problem? We'll need to understand that educating our users is the easiest way to go forward on tackling your Office 365 security problems. So we'll need to kind of get a picture of how the attack landscape is. So if you were to take a close look at this infographic, you see that phishing attacks have been the highest. Now, You must be thinking phishing attacks are quite old now. Users are definitely learned enough to know what a phishing attack is or what a malicious email is and what link to click and what link not to click. If that is the case, no, you're wrong. You've thought it wrong. Your users still fall prey for scamsters from all across the world. In fact, the first thing that the user does when they receive an email from the Nigerian king saying that they are entitled to $1 million, and all they'll have to do is pay up $100 or £100 in upfront, and all they have to do is click that one single link, and your entire Office 365 security goes down, or your entire IT security goes down. So we would essentially need to have an understanding of what's going on and try and have best practices in place that irrespective of the fact that your users are sloppy or not, still save your day. That's the whole idea. So the statistics right here is quite disturbing. We see DOS attacks, we see ransomware attacks on the rise, and all of this happening through a new IAM solution, which is Office 365. So many administrators and many organizations, in fact, agree that they've been through an attack. In fact, the statistics right here are quite jarring. One organization of every two organization gets attacked, or one out of every two organization undergoes a phishing attack. That's quite striking. You have 65% of the administrators who are definitely concerned about email accounts being hacked. So this is the fact. Accounts get compromised all the time, accounts get hacked all the time, and since the number of touch points that are involved in Office 365 are a lot more than your Active Directory or your on-prem system, you are in the weak spot. You would need to essentially understand what sort of attacks can happen. You would essentially need to understand how an account takeover would look like and what happens through this entire process. It starts with a simple attack like a phishing attack. They would probably mimic a legitimate request and try to request for a username or a password reset. Someone grants them that request and then they take over the account. It could probably be something as simple as a brute force attack or a malware that's creeping into your system. So you would need tools or solutions in place that essentially curtail the entry of a malware or let you receive an alert when something is fishy or anomalous. So we are talking about preventing account takeovers. And how do you do it? You start by understanding how an account takeover kill chain could probably look like. So when you understand the process, is quite simple. You can have checkpoints at every single juncture. So here, what does the attacker do? The attacker tries to first gain access, as simple as that, and then they eventually try to establish control by probably getting hold of a few privileges. Then they understand the internal structure of the organization. They see what resources are valuable to them, what data is of value to them, and they then try to exfiltrate that data. And finally, email attacks are the worst to handle because one, it does not compromise just the security of the organization, but also puts the reputation of the organization at stake. So there have been instances where organizations faced huge flack when they when the world realized that they've been compromised, security has been compromised. So we will need to ensure that we get a fair understanding of how attackers work. So it all boils down to the fact that the attackers are well trained. Number one, they are also very much equipped with resources, and users fall prey. So how do you tackle this? Attackers are efficient enough to mask themselves as someone who is super legitimate. They do not want to initiate the attack right away. They would start a BEC and take about probably even 5 months to actually reach the point where they exfiltrate the data. Your victim or the user in the organization essentially starts believing or trusting in the attacker and goes on to exchange quite a lot of emails, and finally one day there's this one malicious link that they click and end up getting down your entire security. So what do you do? This case right here would essentially help you understand what could possibly go wrong. So in one of the companies that we were working with, one of the organizations, this was the problem. So the user from the finance department somehow got in contact with a user with a malicious intent, someone from outside, right? An attacker essentially. And over the course of time, they kept on exchanging emails till one fine day, the attacker tries to mimic the user's behavior. Now the attacker knows how the user writes an email. The attacker very well knows what sort of the conversations does this specific user have in general. So all of that, the attacker is very well aware of the user's profile. So now the attacker goes on to mimic, so essentially gets hold of the access to the domain because the user had clicked the link, and then creates a email ID that looks very similar to this victim, goes on making transactions with organizations outside. And here the biggest problem was the attacker ensured that all trace or all possible trace was cleared off. The organization had a tough time even understanding what had been going wrong because payments were being made to the wrong accounts, and insane deals were closed, and the attacker had like complete control over the account, and the user never really realized. So we are talking about account takeovers that can cost the organization millions of dollars. So it's not just the money that gets lost right here, but if you're an organization that deals with personal data, let's say you have some PII of your users, that's the most valuable target for an attacker. The moment that they know your customer data or some important data in your organization that pertains to their social security number or probably their credit card details, there you go. You would end up facing flack from the compliance regulations like GDPR, personal information being again stolen. So there's quite a lot of problems when it comes to account takeovers, and how do you essentially mitigate that? There are 6 simple steps that we have put together. These work like magic all the time. They essentially help you curtail an ATO even before it could possibly take place. So that is something that you'd not want to forget. So you start off by doing this most basic step, multi-factor authentication. You might think how is multi-factor authentication going to save when there are so many parameters involved in an attack? But then trust me, your multi-factor authentication could essentially save your critical accounts. So when there's MFA in place, you can have something as personal as a face ID in place or a touch ID in place as a factor of authentication. So that definitely can't be spoofed. We're not talking about something as primitive as a security question. We are talking about something as personal and something as unique as a face ID or a touch ID. And this essentially can be obtained. It's available out there. I'll towards the end of the session also share a link to get that specific application. It's called Microsoft Authenticator. You could get your users to install this application, or you could quickly do a push for all your users in the organization, and they could essentially authenticate without any trouble. So many a times there's huge resistance in organizations when there are process changes. Here it's going to be as simple as unlocking their phone, as simple as that. So mobile authenticator from Microsoft, so that is the one that you'll need to be asking your users to install. So that can change your entire multi-factor game. So we're talking about that. Going forward, we'll also need to understand that an administrator should have access to or an aerial view of all the devices that are connecting to the network, or all the devices that are accessing a specific application. Now, when it comes to Office 365, the biggest advantage is Office 365 helps your users be productive on the go. So when your user, let's say, is out there logging into a public Wi-Fi from a coffee shop into your environment, think about the risks that the user is putting your organization against or putting your organization up. So we are talking about being able to understand which are the devices that are a part of your network, which are the devices that already have a footprint on your network, and also to be able to find out the devices that are malicious or devices that are not essentially a part of your network. So you would need an instant alert when a new device tries to access your application or your solution. So that is one additional way of ensuring that an attacker never gets direct access into your system. Next, the most important thing and the easiest thing to do is to set up a process to monitor unusual account logins. This works like magic almost all the time. I have no clue as to why attackers prefer doing their attacks in the midnight. Maybe probably because the users aren't around and they try and they could sneak data out. But then many a times attacks happen in the middle of the night. attacks happen in non-business hours. So that being the case, it is essential that you understand the attacker's behavior, you understand what could possibly go wrong, and have a solution that can alert you when there's an unusual activity during a non-business hour. All right, so you need reports, you need alerts that tell you, or that tells an administrator or any technician who's in charge, saying that there's an unusual login in the middle of the night. If you want an extra factor of authentication to be initiated or triggered, that as well can be configured. So we're talking about having the provision to be contextually authenticating users into the system. All right, the next important tip right here would be to be able to log and audit mailbox. I'll be talking about that in a while. And also with respect to mails, we'll need to check the forwarding rules that are set. This is quite essential. And yes, the last point is going to be on ensuring that you start using Microsoft's Secure Score. If you're new to Microsoft Secure Score, do not worry, I'll give you a quick walkthrough. So starting off with multi-factor authentication, like I was telling you earlier, the challenge is to enforce multi-factor authentication for all your users. They don't want to use it, they don't want to download the application. So Office 365 Manager Plus, the solution that we are talking about, is going to help you implement MFA across your domain, across, let's say you're an organization that's managing multiple Office 365 tenants, then it should not be a problem. You could very much have multiple tenants configured for multi-factor authentications. You can have granular restrictions saying which set of users need to receive what type of authentication. Let's say if there are administrators or groups belonging to with certain privileges, you'd want those users to have stronger MFA. Or probably if it's just a group for the trainees, let's say, you'd not necessarily want a very strong authentication. So you can be very granular, you can customize who gets what. And in fact, like I told you, the authenticator supports Face ID, it supports Touch ID, it supports all new factors of authentication, essentially making it simple for you to set up the authentication and get going. So that could save you from a tremendous load of trouble. The next one is to track the unauthorized devices. There you go, the screenshot right here tells you all active mobile devices. So when it comes to Office 365, most of our users love using the mobile application or the mobile version of Office 365. Somehow they find it more easy, and when they are on the go, it turns out to be quite helpful. So you would want a provision to manage those devices, or have a complete aerial view as to which device is connecting to what application. You would need details specific to when the device logged in. Was the login successful? By any chance, if they've transferred any data, also get hold of that details. So when you're doing a root cause analysis after an attack, let's say, this report would come in handy. But if you want to be proactive and stop the attack even before it happens, you can very much configure an alert for the same report and get going, only having the registered users use your applications. So again, unusual logins was one thing that I wanted to talk about. So here, when we're talking about unusual logins, it is okay to have like predefined rules that tells the system to track behavior beyond business hours. That's okay, that's just basic stuff. But when we're talking about a very complex environment like Office 365 and super equipped attackers, we will need something that levels this game. So we will need this specific functionality, the one that I'm going to tell you. It's called user behavior analytics, UBA as we like to call it. So we're putting together an artificial intelligence algorithm that essentially understands every login activity, or every event, or every touch point. At every touch point, a user's activity gets tracked. A user will receive a profile. So based on the usual activity or based on historical data, a user's profile is built, and when the user is again trying to log in, if there's any deviation from the profile, the administrator gets an instant notification saying that there was an anomalous behavior. So it could be probably something as simple as a different IP, an unusual IP, or something as striking as a different location. So we call it the superhuman travel. So today it's afternoon here in London. all of a sudden I'm in a span of another 20 minutes I'm logging in from, let's say, New York. That is almost impossible. So I logged in 20 minutes before from London, and in another 20 minutes I'm logging in from New York. Is that even possible? Unless I'm Superman, that's not going to be possible. So such unusual activity with respect to vectors like location, with respect to vectors like time, with respect to data from the user's past activity, the devices that they usually use. Is there any unusual IP? Or we in fact have are building an integration with sticks and Staxi feed. So that is essentially going to help you understand if there is any blacklisted IP trying to get access into your system. So all of the account logins get tracked, and you get notified when there's any anomalous activity, right? The next important thing is to be able to turn on logging. You would want to ensure that the mailboxes are audited. You would want to ensure that the account owners are audited, and activities by both non-owners and owners are audited. So be it the admin activity, be it the mailbox activity, you would need to enable that. It's as simple as just enabling the auditing and tracking to see if there's anything malicious going on right there. So when it comes to mail forwarding, now this is one thing that you can notice happening almost all the time. So mail forwarding, this is something that you can look into under two circumstances. One, an attacker trying to exfiltrate data to an external domain, and number two, an insider trying to exfiltrate data for an external domain. So here, if it's an insider who's causing it, most of the time it's because the employee is disgruntled, has a trouble with the management, or is going to quit the organization and wants to have a backdoor access into the data in the organization. So mail forwarding rules need to be tracked at all times. If there's any suspicious activity or forwarding set to a personal email ID or an external domain, ensure that this gets removed right away. Don't even think twice, but ensure that you disable external email forwarding unless it was requested earlier or unless it's accounted for. So this turns out to be the problem with most of the users. Even if they did not have that malicious intention, there could be users who still would love having a backdoor access even after they've left the organization. You can't entertain that. So we're talking about data right here. So you would need a check to ensure that all of this gets cleared off, all of this gets monitored, and you get alerts right when something is about to go wrong. So there's another thing that I'd want you to also keep track of. In addition to all of this, you would want to monitor OneDrive data. If there is any suspicious activity going on in OneDrive, if someone's copying huge volume of data in and out of OneDrive, or probably copying into an external device, or trying to delete some critical file or folder, you can set alerts for critical data and receive alerts on those files and folders, because essentially after an account takeover, this is exactly what an attacker does, tries to copy data. What if you have a system in place that can alert you when something of that sort happens? So this all boils down to this one specific tool, the tool that I'm totally in love with in recent times. So here, if you see, this is called the Secure Score Dashboard. Microsoft just gave it a revamp on the UI quite recently, about like 5-6 days back. The UI looks a lot more intuitive now. You get a straightforward access or straightforward see-through into what's going on in your environment. So the UI right here gives you access to all those actions that you're essentially missing out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly share the link to this specific secure score. All right, let's see if you can tell me what your secure score is. So the secure score dashboard again is the dashboard that tells you where is your organization with respect to others in business, where or how secure is your organization, what have you done and what have you missed. So it tells you all of that, it analyzes all of that and gives you a score on a base score. Just give me a quick second while I pull up the secure score dashboard. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and share the link for your secure score on the chat right now. There you go, 3, 2, 1, and on your chat. So click on this specific link and tell me what your secure score is. In a moment, I'll pull out my secure score. Let's see who's got the highest secure score. So secure score is available for access for free. You don't necessarily need to buy any extra pack or subscription. It's available right there for access. click on this specific link and it takes you to a dashboard. If you haven't clicked it, or if you haven't checked this earlier, this is the time to do. Tell me what your secure score is. Let's see who's got the highest secure score. All right, I've got Jake, who's got a secure score of 187. Okay. I've got Raj, who's got a 235. Okay, that's the highest so far. I've got Sajad, who's got a secure score of 104, and I've got Robert, who's got a secure score of 123. All right, so Raj stands to be the clear winner right here. He's got 235, sorry. But you don't necessarily need to worry if you've got a lesser secure score, because I have a pathetic secure score. My secure score is just 75 of 607. The base point is essentially a function of how your Office 365 environment is currently set. Don't worry, secure scores can be improved overnight. Trust me, you can improve your secure score overnight. And in fact, the dashboard I've pulled right here is the latest upgrade, and it gives you historical data as to how have you scaled up with respect to secure score. I have a sucky secure score. I haven't really improved with respect to my secure score. All of it is way below the minimum limit. My identities are not secure, my passwords are not protected, data is not secure, devices are not protected, apps, infrastructure, all of that is not secure. So what do? Do I panic right now? No, not really. Don't panic. You have access to what's called the improvements dashboard, or improvement actions that you need to take. So when you click on this specific link right here, it takes you to another page like this. So here you get access or get hold of all those actions that you missed out. So these are the things that you'll necessarily need to do. Just give me one quick second while the page loads. The list right here is the list of actions that you need to do. So what do we have right here? We've got the score, and the next thing is the improvements action. That is my next concern. So I will need to know what all I'm supposed to do in order to get my secure score up. And it's not rocket science, it's quite self-explanatory. In fact, it's as simple as establishing what's right. So just give me a quick second while this loads. We were talking about multi-factor authentication. So if you were thinking multi-factor authentication, I'll do it another day, not so important, think again, because Microsoft gives a score of 50 for just enabling multi-factor authentication. So now you understand as to how important that is. And then you have other actions that are also going to get you a better secure score. Here you go. So require multi-factor authentication. You turn multi-factor authentication. You don't even need to turn it on for every user, but I suggest you do it for every user. But if you have privileged accounts, which you definitely do, please do turn MFA on for them. I have a pathetic score of 6 out of 50. Please turn on MFA for all your critical users and you get a 50 out of 50. Easy 50 out of 50. Like, it's just one click away and you get a 50 on 50. And when you enable MFA for all users, you get you get more score. So when you click on any of these actions, you get the reason, or you get the benefit of doing that specific task. So I'm essentially protecting my organization against a possible password crack, a possible account breach. So this is exactly what my organization would want me to do. And in fact, right after you've established the secure score, you can go to your management and tell them that, see, all along my organization had this level of security, and after whatever I've done, it's improved to this. So this is very much the kind of report that you would want your management to see as to how you've contributed to the increase or improvement in the security. As simple as that, straightforward, not even difficult. Here you go. So when you register users when you start tracking OneDrive data, or when you activate password self reset for users, so there are quite a lot of easy to do actions right here. All of these actions that are going to improve your secure score, and trust me, it takes just about 24 hours for it to update. Not a big deal. In fact, as a best practice, I recommend you do this once in a month. Okay, you are going to have new action items when you come back after your secure score improves. So review mailbox forwarding rules. This is one tip that I gave you today. So when you click on this, when you check this, you're essentially saving yourself from an account breach, from data exfiltration, from a malicious insider. So you are in complete control of your Office 365 security, and the only thing that you would probably need is the secure score dashboard. So please go through the secure score dashboard. It is quite self-explanatory, not difficult at all. It's probably going to take you let's say a day's time to go through all of these actions and understand what can be done immediately and what could probably wait. Here you go. So I have the ones that I've not completed. I'm a defaulter, big time defaulter. I've got 56 things to do, and I've just completed 8. So there you go. It's as simple as that, and it tells you how are you securing your environment. So I would suggest, I would want you, I would love to hear back from you guys after you've enabled all these options. Tell me how your secure score improved. Now I know Raj has got a 235, Robert's got a 123, and Sajad's got a 104. I would want you guys to write back to me and tell me how your secure score improved, because we could very much work together in making this possible. It's as simple as just enabling a checkbox, and why not have the benefit of that. All right, so that is just a quick second. So that is the secure score dashboard for you. Please understand, this is quite important, and this is also easy. This is quite fun. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope you found some value out of this session, and I'm available for taking questions. If you have any specific questions, I'd love to take them. I very much appreciate your patience in staying all through the session. You guys have been such a wonderful audience. In case you want a copy of the webinar, please do drop a message right now with your email address. I'd send the video over, and I'll also send the presentation deck over. In fact, we've put together a very cool resource kit. The resource kit is for essentially hacking the secure score. How do I easily get the highest possible secure score? I'm going to give you access to that ebook as well. Try and go through the ebook, and in fact we've made it super simple, self-explanatory, more like a self-help guide. You can share it even with your colleagues, all of you guys who are working on the Office 365 front, and get the best out of it. Just give me 2 minutes. I'm going to quickly share it to you on chat. There you go. That is the link. Just a quick second. There you go. So this is the link. This link is going to essentially get you to this page. Have I got it? All right. So here's where you download the admin's guide. You could go on, make use of this admin's guide that we have put together. Quite self-explanatory. And meanwhile, I also have a white paper for you guys on Office 365 management and reporting. If you're the guy in your organization managing this, go for it. Enjoy. This is super helpful. There are many resources, so we've got a couple of resources, all of this lined up. So this is essentially the admin's guide for secure score. So you can download this, hack your secure score, get the best possible secure score, and also please do write back to me. I'd love to listen to your Office 365 story. Thank you so much. You guys have been awesome today. My name is Jay, your presenter for the day. You can write to me at jay@manageengine.com. Take care. See you. Bye bye.